Welcome to our future in Johnson County, where we are celebrating the success of the old courthouse. It continues to serve the community, but now in a different way than when it was built. Once it was destined for destruction and the trash heap, the action of which brought a great division among the people. Half the population was satisfied with destroying the structure, while the other half was furious. The idea of its destruction brought sadness to those who wished to preserve it. The county commissioners looked at this from two sides: the cost to the public in taxes to keep the building versus the enormous cost of demolition, which of course would be on the backs of the taxpayers. The problem became whether to make the taxpayers pay for the demolition or reinvest a portion of that cost into preserving the structure. The answer was not a simple one. Searching for answers and weighing all the possibilities, the commissioners came up with a solution. They joined forces with the Johnson County Revitalization Corporation, which, because they had a greater advantage of obtaining outside resources for funding, was the perfect answer. With the help of private funding as well as grants, the money for repairs and upkeep began to filter in, and the actual cost to the taxpayers was less than the cost of demolition. Once travelers along Interstate 24 saw this sign as they approached from the north, but now a new sign began to attract their attention. The old courthouse, once destined for the trash heap, became a place to attract visitors from across the county and those traveling on our roadways. Repairs and renovations began immediately. The old second floor, as seen in this plan drawing, was restored as nearly as possible to its original layout with the spacious courtroom. The old doors to the courtroom still existing were also preserved. The large open space made it possible for a museum as well as a meeting room. A portion was set aside for community meetings, the cost of renting the space contributing to the maintenance of the building. Another portion of the upper chamber became a museum with kiosks depicting some of the more famous court cases held in this room throughout its history. One wall was lined with a multitude of old-school photos of Johnson County. The museum on the second floor became an attraction to the people of Johnson County and the traveling public. Donations from the public were gratefully accepted. On the lower floor, regional officials from the state of Illinois established and rented office space. One of the greatest opportunities came when a local group of ladies began to have quilting parties in another part of the first floor space. This group brought the skills of the past into the future to help preserve our past. This became a place where the quilters from all over the county began to display and sell their creations, with a portion of those sales being returned to the fund of the old courthouse. The success of this group, joining with other quilting communities, became a point where those interested in the craft would come from long distances to attend this attraction in Johnson County. Growing on this, other old country skills began to set aside space for demonstrations and the sale of their products. The whole of Johnson County became involved, utilizing some of the now open basement space for other demonstrations and points of sale. Developing from this and adopting the plan of the semi-annual Junk Jamboree, a new craft fair began with paid spaces for vendors. Growing from that, Johnson County revived some of the aspects of the old-time county fairs. Centered on the old courthouse, canning arts and other skills were judged and prizes awarded. This became an annual event with spaces available for vendors of all types, each paying for space. The old courthouse, with the help from outside sources, began to generate income that would offset expenses. The visions of the young people of Johnson County who drew and painted these creations, their renditions of the old courthouse, were preserved. The old building, once the envy of many counties, would remain. And the people gave thanks to those commissioners of a few years ago who, in their wisdom, decided not to erase our history. Johnson County became a tourist destination, the income generated from which also contributed to the tax income of the county.